everybody. My name is Titus. I'm with Glow Growth and Development, and I have Miss Donna Carlson here. And we just want to share a couple minutes with you. And I'll introduce Miss Donna here, and she can tell us a little bit about herself.
Well, good. Thank you so much, Titus, for having me on. I know that the missions that both of us are on in life are really synergistic. And I love that you use the word synergy like I do. We both love to introduce people and see bigger things happen in the world. And it's fun to watch what happens when you help somebody make a new friend.
Yeah.
I started 360 Life Strategies 2 years ago, but it's the germination of about 20 years of research on what it really takes to be 100% in possession of this gift called life, and how we can really maximize our presence here on earth. The ticket is here. It's not someday later. And a lot of us discount what we can do. And it's my job to release more people into their gifting with confidence and courage.
Yeah, a couple of things that you just said there really resonate with me. You know, I was writing in my journal this morning, and I was talking about heaven and hell. And even though we might not completely experience it here on earth, we can definitely get a really good taste of it.
Yeah.
And I used the example of the homeless guy that's addicted to drugs, and he's sunburned. I saw one of these guys the other day, and my heart really went out to him. He's got scabs on his head because of the sunburn, and he's picking at it because his addiction, and I'm like, man. And then I look at other people that I know, and they're just full of joy and full of life, and they just live in that peace.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you might not be able to completely experience heaven and earth and hell, but you can get real close. You can create a hell here for sure.
Well, either way, and we don't realize sometimes that we have a choice. I just had a conversation with someone who saw a link that I posted on a strategy to combat anxiety so it doesn't overtake you. And she said, be careful that you try to say that anxiety is just in your head and it's not a medical condition. And I said, I honestly believe it only becomes a medical condition when we let it get out of control. Just like the guy who doesn't have complete control of what's going on in his body. We all make choices, and sometimes we get down a hole because we've really lost control. It's like going downhill on a bike and your brakes have gone out. And I really want to help people to become more aware of what their options are before they get to that point. And, I hate it when I meet people who were a lot like me, getting all the way to midlife wondering, well, is this all there is? and I want to say, no. In fact, we were created to live an abundant life. And if we don't take advantage of that right now, if we think that it's going to come in heaven, we're missing out on the gift of what today is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you say that they're talking about anxiety.
Yeah.
And I just went through a workshop, and it shows the parallel of knowledge, right? And going from knowledge to being grateful and having appreciation and being creative on one side of this chart, and on the other side is fear and anxiety and worry, and how it starts at one point with fear and worry, and it leads to anxiety as you let it progress, and then it gets to depression and all this other stuff that tears you down. And so exactly. You can be on one side or you can be on the other. I choose to be on the other, right? I don't want to live there.
We might wake up on one side in the morning, and part of what I like to do, the reason I call my business 360 Life Strategies is because I think a lot of people will tell us how we're supposed to behave, and just take anxiety or depression as an example. People say, you can't think that way, or stop thinking that way. And if you suffer from that on a regular basis, you want to shake them and say, I can't help the way I think, but help me get out of it. And after many, many counselors and coaches telling me, stop thinking that way, kind of like the Bob Newhart video from the 70s. Stop it. It was hilarious. But that's what we think when somebody is like stuck in some kind of craziness. But when you're stuck in that craziness, you don't know how to get out. You need a strategy. You need to know, before I end up, or if I wake up in the morning on the other side of that chasm, I need to have a strategy written down somewhere that tells me how to get back over to health and happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Just myself recently, a personal story for myself. I was stuck with something, right? And I had a mental block, and I had to go see somebody. I had to go talk to somebody, and they helped me walk and navigate me through that.
Yeah.
And it's that, when some people might relate it to a cloud in their brain or a fog or something like that. Uh-huh. It's absolutely possible to get through it. And it definitely helps to have somebody hold your hand. Yeah.
Well, I think it's sad that a lot of us think we need to navigate that path alone. It's hard to be vulnerable and admit that there's something going on here, and I don't know. And I think what released me finally a few years ago is that crazy is normal. And as long as we keep pursuing something called normal, we're going to be disappointed. And I like to say, when I'm speaking to women especially, that normal is nothing but a setting on your dryer. So stop living as if there's some state that you're supposed to achieve in life. It's really a daily walk.
Yeah. And normal, when you said that, I got to, I'm reading this book, and it's talking about expectancy and expectations.
Uh-huh.
And how that you can have those expectations, and it typically leads you down a bad way.
Yes.
Right? Because you have those
Well, and my husband taught me years ago that any kind of disappointment is really just a product of your expectations. And it's not that we should lower our expectations altogether about life, but keeping our expectations modified give us the ability to be a little bit more flexible with what happens in our path, and not become anxious because something's not going as planned.
Yeah. I do a quick 2 minutes with Titus video. And the other day I was talking about being complacent and being content. You can be content, but being complacent is, that's where I was using it as being slothful and lazy, and you don't want to be complacent. You want to be content, and that goes with expectations, right?
Yeah.
And having those expectations. So
good point.
Anyway,
I like that difference.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about your growing, your stretching, how you've become to where you're at now, and kind of how you would define yourself and who you are today.
I love that question. I've been working for about the past 9 months on this metaphor for life that is really meaningful for me, taking the art of winemaking and understanding how when a winemaker chooses the grapes that she's going to use to make a fine wine, well, after she chooses those grapes, they go in and they get crushed and they get pressed. So sometimes when I find myself in life being crushed and pressed by circumstances, I have had a tendency to slide into depression or anxiety because I'm wondering, what have I done wrong? Why am I being crushed? Why am I being pressed? And when I realized that that crushing and pressing is a necessary part of the process to make me something useful, then to make me really an excellent product that people will enjoy, I realized this is it's just part of the process, and part of my challenge is to go through that crushing and embrace what's mine to own in this process. So it's been a beautiful journey, because years ago I would really be crushed by circumstances or people's opinions of me. And that's when I first started to germinate these strategies for my own life. And then I realized when I became a certified coach a couple of years ago, a lot of the women I talked to experience the same thing. And women in different capacities at different levels of leadership all feel a lack of confidence, a lack of courage, that sick feeling in their stomach. And so now I love to see that as part of a process that makes me better. And I consume a lot, almost too much information. I'm just a high C on the disc. I love taking in information. I love to organize and share information. And one of the ways that I have learned and really accelerated my own growth is to really put a cap on the intake and spend a lot more time in quiet meditation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I started a contemplative prayer group a couple of years ago. And when we first started that prayer group, we went around in a circle and talked about why did we want to increase our abilities to be contemplative. And almost without fail, everyone said, it's the monkeys in my head. I just need to quiet the monkeys in my head. That chatter makes me crazy, and I need to think clearly. And so the week 2, the instructor called me and asked, how's my contemplative prayer practice? I said, the monkeys are out of their cages and pooping all over the living room.
Uh-oh.
And, but I love to share that story because so many people say, yes, I know exactly what you mean. I absolutely know where you are. And when we're able to be that vulnerable and share those stories, then people know there's hope for me too. And I have learned painfully over time to quiet the monkeys and get them back in their cages.
Yeah. It's those voices. I was talking to somebody the other day about the stories. I had a visitor friend from Austin, and he was up here in Colorado for a little bit.
Yay.
And he was there you go. And he was telling me a little bit of story. He was with family. He was visiting family, and he was kind of going through the story about, his relationship that was with his mother-in-law and how it was one comment by her. And in his head, he went on a 1,000,000-mile journey, right? All the way back down to it, through his past about this and this and this and this.
Uh-huh.
And I said, dude, you're listening to the voices in your head, and you're like those monkeys.
Yeah.
I said, you need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Stop listening to those stories. They're paradigms. You got to recognize the paradigm, turn it off, and start talking that new paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's a really good reminder that self-awareness is about half of the journey. When you recognize that that's happening, learning how to stop it and pivot is really the next most important action to take. It's really smart.
Yeah. Also, you're talking about being crushed, and in my life, my childhood was a crushing, right? And I think it was I was watching a Greg Braden video or something, and he was like, acknowledge it, forgive it, and let it go. Right?
Yeah.
But appreciate what you have become through it.
Yeah.
And for myself, it's like I can look back at the journey and see all this stuff, but then I look at who I am today, and I'm grateful. Right? Who I am today, I'm grateful for having gone through it. It sucks to go through it, but who you are, the wine, the diamonds, all that stuff, the end product is good.
Exactly. I completely agree. And that's why looking at that crushing from a different perspective helps. Nobody wants to be orphaned like I was. Nobody wants to grow up and put yourself through college and be poor most of your life. But going through that kind of crushing, all of us have some kind of story from our childhood. And I used to think that people who have parents somehow had it better or had an inside scoop on life. And I realize a lot of people with parents still living still don't have a relationship with their parents, and they still feel very isolated. So I've learned that orphan story really applies to a lot of people, regardless of their situation growing up. And we can become isolated no matter where we are, especially in a very crowded room. We have to learn. I love the way you said to appreciate it, acknowledge it, and move on. Because I used to tell my story, and I would be depressed for days. And I wondered, well, how am I ever going to share my story for restorative purposes if it's going to just send me into depression? And it's because I wasn't putting a cap on it. I was going back in there and stirring it up. And that stirring up made me start to question myself in the same old ways I always had. So you've laid it out beautifully. You got to just acknowledge it and be grateful for what it taught you, and put a little punctuation mark at the end of it and move on.
Yeah, I call it wallowing in the mud, right?
Yeah.
You make some mud, and then you get in it and you wallow in it, right? And I'm like, get out of the mud, go take a shower, clean off, and let's go, you know?
Right.
Leave the mud puddle back there.
Or to use the analogy of how cows eat, you know, they have multiple stomachs and they regurgitate their food and chew on it again. And so I think of what a cow's doing, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to chew on that. I'm gonna swallow it. Yeah. I told somebody the other day, I had a little bit of an experience with somebody. I said, I just put it on the sun, right? I just envisioned taking that and I package it all up. It's a Tony Robbins exercise actually that I learned. And you package it up and you just throw it towards the sun and you just give it to the sun and let it burn up in all that nuclear fusion. That's good. Yeah. Imagining it burning, you know, that visualization alone is just a great way to put an end to it. Definitely.
Yeah. So when we first met, you had talked about 3 circles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you dive into that a little bit and kind of explain that a little bit more? And then tell me what that middle circle, like when you have the 3 of them together, what's the middle circle? What does that represent?
I love that you remembered that, because I walked away from that thinking I needed to develop that conversation a little bit more clearly. So we'll see if I can make it lucent today. I have really for 21 years spent time wondering what it means to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Because I want to embrace all of life. I really want to be 100% of what I was created to be and not leave anything on the table. And so I've done a lot of research on spirit, soul, and body, mind, soul, and spirit, all of those different combinations of things to see, well, how do different people interpret it? And I'm just trying to make sense of it so that I can provide a good path for my kids and my grandkids, and hopefully be an example on that path. So I describe kind of the 3 spheres of life as spirit, soul, and body. And my philosophy is that you cannot be truly excellent in what you do unless you bring your whole self to the table. And when you take that Venn diagram, spirit, soul, and body, and you put them in an orbit where they are connected at a center point, then you realize it's easier to visualize why your spiritual health is so important to how you show up at work. Your mental health, of course, is important to how you show up at work, but also it's connected to your physical body. The amount of movement you have in your life. I don't like the word exercise because I think people have turned it into something evil, and it's not. But your ability to get up and generate a higher heart rate sends neurochemicals to your brain. There's no way you can be your smartest self if you're not getting that neurochemical generation. And it's funny because I know a lot of people who are really not taking care of their physical body with all of their heart, soul, and mind, but they're truly really smart. And I'm like, how much faster, more agile, and more intelligent would you be if you actually did take care of your physical energy and strength? And, you know, a lot of the things that happen to us in the workplace, on teams, our ability to receive feedback, our ability to be completely present in a team meeting, all of these things have to do with how we generate energy in our body. So when in the past, when I've shown up to like a strategy meeting, an all-day strategy meeting, and they have a bunch of donuts there in the morning, and then they bring in pasta for lunch, I'm like, well, thanks for taking care of my soul, but I'm going to be taking a nap in the back of the room. I might as well check my brain back in the trash can, because I don't have any mental capacity to serve if I'm going to eat this stuff. And
Yeah,
that's,
sugar high and carbs. Yeah.
well, I mean, it's just, the thing is, it's not about rules. It's not about what's right and wrong, what your mama told you or what your old PE teacher told you to do. It's just a fact that neurologically we're made to thrive under certain circumstances. And if we don't do our best to moderate those circumstances and provide the best possible environment for us to live completely wide awake, fully alive, mentally clear, we can't do it. We can't expect that of ourselves. And honestly, when I find myself having a hard day and I'm mentally sluggish and not really able to put two sentences together, I just take a nap. Because why work? Because it's going to take 3 times as long to get the work done if you're not taking care of that. And I can tell you for certain that my family has seen the difference as I've started to discover this and put certain disciplines into operation in my own life. They've seen the fruit of it, and I'm a different kind of mama and a different kind of wife, and not perfect, but at least they know when I'm having a bad day, they can say, how many cookies did you have? How much popcorn did you eat? Because they know that popcorn, even though it's salty, corn metabolizes in our body like sugar. So I'll come out of a movie crying and depressed because it was a sad movie, but I'll be crying and depressed for the rest of the day because I ate an entire gallon of popcorn. So, I create a coaching program and retreats for women to specifically just learn how to look at your life from an objective point of view and stop thinking about what makes me happy or satisfying my cravings, but what is the formula I can put together to create a strategy that's going to get me that best life that I want? Does that make sense?
I like the best life that you want.
Well, other people have used your best life and stuff like that, but there's nothing new under the sun. That's one thing.
Yeah.
When I first started down this journey after about 20 years of this, I would kind of feel afraid when I find somebody else who's teaching about this holistic awareness of your life, because I thought that was my idea. And it was pretty funny how God's like, "You're hilarious, Donna. That was not your idea." You're welcome for the inspiration, but lots of people have studied this for years. You're not the first one, believe it or not.
Yeah. Centuries.
So now I'm just curious and a voracious learner. And I think that my interpretation of this wisdom is going to help people who haven't been able to consume it from anybody else.
So when you have those 3 circles, is there a center circle in there? Is there a center spot?
The center spot of that Venn diagram, I'm trying to create a picture of where you have those 3 circles overlapping. There's my 3 circles.
Sure.
When I coach people on creating their life strategy, we're designing the overlap of those 3 circles. We're designing what happens when you bring the best of your spiritual awareness, your soul awareness, which is, mind, will, and emotions, and then your body awareness. That's really everything else. It's your life, your relationships, your finances, your work. And a lot of people say, "Oh, work is such a small percentage." And I said, well, we spend a lot of time at work. Yeah, but if you don't bring your whole self to work, they're not getting their money's worth. I do. Yeah. I've spoken to several different organizations and startup CEOs on the subject of, cultivating a culture in your team. And I said, why is it that consistently year after year employee engagement surveys show that about 60% of employees are moderately engaged? Really only about 10% of your employees are really fully engaged in the mission. And why is that? A lot of people are not even fully engaged in their own life. They show up in a fog. And how much can you give when only, 60% of you even shows up for work, or less if you had donuts? Don't get me wrong. If you ever see me eat a donut, I eat donuts. I eat chocolate all the time. I like wine. I'd like to be careful that I don't consume things when I need to use my brain. You know, it's just a matter of being aware. But if we can create the overlap of those three spheres, is really the focus of designing a life with intention and purpose, then we can, if we have the rhythms in life to live within that overlapping circle, then we can venture outside of that circle on vacation or on occasion and be safe. But if we are constantly living our lives bouncing outside of that boundary, we're creating chaos and exhaustion. So we're really, in creating that overlapping circle in that Venn diagram, we're creating a safe place where we have rhythms and boundaries that we know will guide the maximum happiness, energy, and just joy to be able to navigate life.
Yeah, I say like the full expression of life, right? It or the rose as it's fully open, right? It starts out as a bud and it starts to get open, but when it's fully open, it's absolutely beautiful.
Right. It's true.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your workshop coming up in November.
Yeah. Okay. First, I'm going to change the word there from workshop to retreat. You know, I have, I've been to a lot of, I'm kind of a voracious learner. So I've been to a lot of retreats and conferences and workshops. And that's why I'm becoming very conscious about the language that I use. The word retreat means to step back and pull back from your forward pursuit and take a moment to pause. And this retreat in November, I've crafted it specifically for women. I love men, don't get me wrong, married to a great one for 25 years. But I've created this experience for women because the idea is to put a pin in the hustle that we continue to proliferate because we're just getting up and obeying the next rule that we need to approach, the next fire we need to put out, the next big thing. If we can't take a minute to pause, we'll never really even receive the maximum amount of inspiration that is available to us. And I'm talking about exceeding abundantly beyond all that we can ask or think. We can't reach that until we slow down. And I like to say that we have to slow down to go faster. So this is for high performing women to put a pin in it. Everything's good, but we're going to stop and breathe and rest. We're going to do a little work using that same wine metaphor I introduced earlier. We're going to take a look at the vineyard and how is it that really, really top-notch noble wines are made. There are basically 5 qualities to a noble wine: harmony, symmetry, complexity, finesse, and elegance. So how am I going to order my life and create that overlapping circle in my Venn diagram so that I can go back into the world where I'm accomplishing amazing things, using my best intellect, using the power of team? How can I do that with the greatest harmony, symmetry, complexity, finesse, and elegance? And I just have a process where we take a look at the soil and figure out what parts of the vineyard are working for us and which parts do we need to excavate and get rid of. And then we take a look at how we start to create the rhythms in life that are going to support those 5 attributes. And we drink we drink a little wine too. And we do a little yoga because we're learning how to slow down and listen.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. Wow. Well, just how you described that and to impress that, to take that and to impress it into a lady's life is just, the person that would come out of that retreat would be glowing and just radiant and just full of life and just wow.
And ready to impact multiple people to help them discover their greatest. And that's the whole idea. We are all just points of a spear. We all have so many people that we're connected with. And there's no better time than now to make sure that you are cultivating your best life, because I mean, we don't get a second chance at this experience, whether you believe in heaven or not. You don't get a second chance of this life where we get to impact people around us. And she will walk out a changed person. Yeah.
And you use the word rhythm there at the end, and that's something that I've discovered lately, is to recognize those rhythms and where I'm at. It's like I use the words, because I grew up in Florida, the ebb and flow of the wave, right? Yeah. And the tide, and to recognize, if you're not in full energy, full whatever, then it's okay to stop. Don't try and do something when you're not there.
Right. Good point. I love that picture of a wave. And in that contemplative prayer group, we use that as a meditation. Have you ever sat in the shallow and let the waves come over you and then feel the waves pull back, that magnetic draw? It's amazing to think about whatever is weighing you down, whatever burden you're carrying. When that wave comes, it kind of picks it up. And then when it pulls past into the sea, it's getting diffused into a much larger, greater body than that can carry it. So it's a great way to just watch, that heavy burden just wash right off of us.
Yeah. There's a lot of correlation between, that I pull from having grown up in Florida and being in the ocean and at the beach and even putting your toes in the sand, right? When I put my toes in the sand, man, life is off, the work life, and I'm there, toes in the sand, and I'm just, that's my spot.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. I think we all need a place to unplug. So I'm glad you have your place.
Yes. Thank you. So is there anything else that you want to mention, or anything else that you want to go over before we head off here?
Well, gosh, I guess to just put a pin in it, I appreciate you mentioning this retreat, because I'm kind of in the crux of just starting to look for 12 women who really need this reset to basically crush old mindsets and habits and belief systems and create a clear and agile mind, life-giving rhythms, and really new wine. That there's never a better time to create your best life. So I really appreciate you giving me a chance. I'm so glad you recorded it, because I like the way I said that. It's becoming good for me to remember how to talk about this. And really appreciate it, Titus. You've been a real joy in the week that I've known you. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Where can they find out more about you? I know you're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook. Where can they find, do you have a website that they can go to?
I do. Donna Carlson 360 on LinkedIn and on Instagram. My website is 360lifestrategies.com. And if you go to that website, you'll understand a little bit about my coaching approach, my one-on-one coaching program, which is, really similar to what I do at a retreat. The retreat is just like a concentrated version of that. And there's a link to the retreat page on that website, so you can learn more. If you think you're one of the 12 women that needs to be there in November, I'm ready to talk to you. Just give me a call.
Awesome. Well, Miss Donna, it's been a pleasure to have known you a week or so, and I appreciate being introduced to you and our conversations. It's been really good, and I look forward to. I think in one of your emails you said something about building something together, and that's one of my taglines is let's build a better community together.
Right.
And that's what I'm looking to do.
I love it. I love what you're doing. So glad to be part of it.
Great. Well, Miss Donna, you have an awesome, incredible day, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Titus. Take care.